Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. I am Luke Lipinski.
And I'm Doug Cannon.
On this week's episode, we take a long, hard look at the Edmonton Oilers and set the field for the upcoming NCAA Hockey Tournament.
We're also going to take a look at who's struggling around the NHL as the playoffs loom.
All that and more. Let's drop the puck on episode 34. Here we are again. Doug, good to see you.
Good to see you, Luke.
That's good to hear.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday to
just
you
so
as well.
everybody knows we're recording on a Sunday.
Well, yeah, now you just blew our cover 10
Yeah.
seconds into the show. Of course, it is episode number 34, so I ask you, Doug.
There's only one.
You always say that, and then you list like 9 guys. You're only allowed to list one number 34. Who is it?
Dominic Hasek.
Oh. I didn't even think of that. I was going to go John Van Beesbrook, who was pretty solid too, but yeah, Hasek's the man.
6 Vezina trophies.
Yeah, you can't argue with 6 Vezina trophies. Van Beesbrook is a nice runner-up, though.
Yeah, well, I had Jeff Courtnall as a backup.
Mika Kiprusoff.
And then I had, just because I like his name, Dan Cloutier.
Wow, that's it's a very, very classy-sounding name.
But
well,
yeah, it had to be Hasek.
This is the time of year when you're going to end up talking goalies.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, for you'll talk goalies every day of the
Goalies
week
and
anyway.
defensemen, that's what I like to talk about.
I had a weird day. Driving in here, I heard the radio stations blurred together. Like, I didn't get good reception of either, so I heard One Direction on one station and Billy Idol on the other station. It's the ultimate combination.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I started my Sunday. So, playoff hockey.
I started by sleeping in.
Sleeping in for you is what, 7?
No, 8 o'clock. I
Oh.
slept into 8 o'clock this
8
morning.
o'clock.
You believe that?
Usually you get up at 8 o'clock Eastern time.
Yeah.
We're not in the East.
No, my boys' hockey is done, so I've got a couple of weeks where I have my weekends back.
Yeah, done for a couple weeks. Not like done for the off season, done for like 3 weeks. Other teams that might be done for in about 3 weeks.
Oh, what a beautiful segue that was.
I felt
You're
good
a
about
pro,
it.
man. That's good.
Let's start with Toronto just to see how you're going to react
thanks.
to that. I don't think the Maple Leafs will miss the playoffs. Everybody in Toronto does.
Not like all the other pundits that have thrown in the towel for them.
Yeah. It's not looking great, though. They've lost 4 in a row at the worst possible time. As we record this, they have 80 points, which has them still as the first wild card in the East.
You know, I just threw a jab at the pundits, but the one thing I will agree with the pundits is that the thing that's hurting Toronto right now, and I think it's been hurting them actually all season, is goaltending.
Yeah, I mean, you would know that better than most. I mean, you are self-admitted Maple Leafs apologist.
No.
No?
See, it's all in how you frame it.
Supporter?
I'm a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay.
I grew up in the Toronto area, so yeah, I support my fandom towards the Maple Leafs.
As bitter as you are, you're not as bitter as most Maple Leafs fans that I know.
I'm not bitter. I mean, I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatic individual, and goaltending is hurting this club right now.
Well, as I said, they've lost 4 in a row, 80 points. Detroit is right behind them, and Detroit is doing what you would expect Detroit to do even without anybody left on their roster.
Yes.
They've won 3 in a row, so they're currently the second wild card. They're 1 point back at Toronto. Washington is 1 point back at Toronto. Columbus is 2 points back at Toronto. So a team that we were talking about as being in that 2-3 matchup last week in the Atlantic Division is all of a sudden now, I mean, if they keep losing, they will miss the playoffs.
Well, I mean, that's a given, but I mean, well, I'm going to go back to the goaltending. I mean, they got to find a way to get those two guys to shore up. Bernier's out with an injury right now.
Okay, so then if you're James Reimer, this is your chance to kind of reclaim.
This is your chance to say, hey, look, you should have stuck with me all along, and I'm going to take you into the playoffs. You know, I was very excited when they picked up Bernier. I thought that was a terrific pickup. To me, as it just hasn't really panned out, and I'm not even looking at either goaltender stats right now. I'm just an overall 70-some-odd games into the season, I don't think they have a clear number one.
Well, they've given up 16 goals total in their last 4 games, which is not going to get it done.
No.
And the teams that they've lost to are Washington, Detroit, Tampa, and Montreal. Now,
those are decent teams.
Well, and they're the teams right behind them.
Right.
Like if you're Toronto, just beat Washington or Detroit, and even if you lose 3 in a row, you're okay as long as you beat one of those 2 teams. It goes back to a bigger, I guess, debate of can you win at the level that these teams are at and going into the playoffs and have success and make a deep run if you're rotating goalies? Because we even saw St. Louis 2 years ago.
That's a very good point.
I know. That's why I made it.
Because if you got a hot goalie, you got to ride him. And I watched that when Toronto made their West Coast swing. They were playing Anaheim, San Jose. Bernier was on fire against Anaheim. And then the very next night, Reimer starts against San Jose.
And they lose 6-2.
Right. And I'm like, why wouldn't you have stayed with the hot goalie?
Yeah, it's a weird situation. I mean, I get why Toronto went out and got Bernier because Reimer wasn't necessarily proven. And Bernier is a good goalie if you can, if you get everything going there. But I thought Reimer was solid last year for that team. I don't think he's the reason they lost to Boston in the playoffs.
Platooning's a baseball thing, not a hockey thing.
I don't even know if it works in baseball, but especially a goalie.
You have to have a clear number one. I'm sorry, you just have to have it. Toronto doesn't have it. Hopefully they get their act together because I am a Toronto fan and I want to see them in the playoffs. But, you got Detroit a point behind them, and I watched Mike Babcock almost had an aneurysm on the bench the other night because one of his guys took a bad penalty, and his team was in the game at that point. That's what drives that machine. With all the injuries that Detroit, Mike Babcock does not like to lose.
No, look. There's the two guys in sports. There's the I really want to win, and then there's the I'm not going to lose. And if you're not going to lose, as weird as it sounds, you are the one that has more success because there's a difference between I want to win and I need to not lose.
Right.
Absolutely. There's a harder drive there. So Detroit, I don't want to say I told you so, but here we go again. I mean, no Datsuk, no Zetterberg. Gustav Nyquist has 21 goals this year, 5 in his last 4 games. That's somebody's going to step up.
I'm still going to say that Detroit doesn't make it because Washington's making a push. Washington's not done.
Washington doesn't have to be done. That's the beauty of it now. You could be wrong about Detroit, and Toronto could miss the playoffs, which would make the greatest podcast ever. Except as a Pittsburgh fan, I don't want to play Detroit in the first round, so I'd prefer Toronto stayed in. But
what are you saying there? There's a subtext there. Wow.
Yeah, there is. You can go back.
Holy cow.
I'd rather play the team with 2 goalies. Look, I keep trying to make this point. St. Louis 2 years ago was great. Nearly won the President's Trophy. And they balanced their goaltending between Brian Elliott and Yaroslav Halak that year better than any team I can remember in the last 5-6 years. Like both goalies played off each other very well. They were both having great seasons. They got into the playoffs, and it's not like they lost just because of goaltending. But the second you face adversity in a 7-game series and your goalie has a bad game, then you're in that weird predicament of, so do I just go away from him instantly and show him no confidence? Or do I leave this other good goalie on the bench and maybe go down 2 games in this series? You got to pick a goalie. You just have to.
Okay.
It's nice to have 2, but you have to pick one.
Well, and that's why you have to. I mean, there's the reason it's called backup.
Yeah. Look at the other team. Look at the most successful teams.
What about Columbus?
I don't think Columbus is done. I think then they have a goalie. That's just a feisty team that won't go away, and they're a point back of Detroit and Washington. Basically what it breaks down to is Toronto, Detroit, Washington, Columbus. That's 4 teams fighting for 2 spots.
I agree. So, I mean, I think the one that's in the biggest trouble right now is Toronto because they've fallen the furthest because the other teams were always in that range of always hanging on towards those last 2 spots, where Toronto, for a while there, was clearly in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
And now they've just gone dun, 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 dun. So we'll see what happens. And then over in the West.
Well, wait, before we go to the West, you would know this better than I would. What is the pressure cooker like in Toronto? Because I see this race right now. I'm just zeroing in on Detroit and Toronto. Detroit is picking up speed. It's like 2 guys running a race. Detroit's picking up speed coming around the final stretch. Toronto is like walking backwards right now. But the pressure in Toronto every time they slip up only seems to make it worse.
When you're in Toronto and the Maple Leafs are in the playoffs, you can't walk 5 feet without seeing somebody wearing a Leaf logo, a Leaf flag on their car, Leaf decorations in retail shop windows. It's the lead story on every newscast, every sportscast, every radio broadcast. I mean, you can't turn a corner without knowing the fact that that team's in the playoffs.
What about the Toronto Raptors? They get the same coverage?
No. That would be a no.
Okay. I still think Toronto makes the playoffs. They're too talented to miss.
I think so, too. I think that – and they got a great coach.
They do, but it's just never good to look over your shoulder and be like, all right, somebody's trying to chase us down. Who is it? Oh,
Oh,
it's
it's
Detroit.
Detroit.
That's an uncomfortable feeling. All right, so over to the West.
Well, it looks like Minnesota's pretty safe.
Yeah, they're kind of stumbling down the stretch here, though.
Yeah,
That,
but are they going to stumble that much?
no, and I do kind of like them in a playoff series, depending who they're playing. But they've left the door open where they could still be caught by Phoenix, and if you can be caught by Phoenix, you could still be caught by Dallas. Minnesota's going to make the playoffs, but I'd kind of like to see them just slam the door.
The funny part here, though, is Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver's been funny all year.
They're in it. I mean, like, they're not in the playoffs as we're talking right now, but they're only 5 points behind Phoenix.
Yeah, but they've also played an extra game, more than Phoenix. Phoenix looks good. Vancouver doesn't right now.
Yeah, but
I hear what you're
it
saying.
only takes
Mathematically,
mathematically, they're still in it. Where if you'd asked me a week ago, I would have, and I think I did say Vancouver's done.
oh yeah, you've said Vancouver's done every week on this
And
show.
I said Winnipeg was done. And then today I pull up the standings and I'm like, well, maybe not.
Well, this will give you an indicator of how Vancouver's season's been going. They're 4-3 in their last 7 games, and it feels like they're on a 15-game winning streak. I mean, this is a team that had won 3 of 16 at one point there. It's been such a horrible year for Vancouver that, look, if the Canucks make the playoffs somehow, and I don't think they're going to, they're out in the first round. At least Phoenix and Dallas could give somebody some trouble in the first round, depending who they play.
Well, yeah, because I think for both Phoenix and Dallas, especially Phoenix, is just one of those teams that when they're in that type of a situation, a pressure situation, that's when they perform.
They've got experience in the playoffs. Dallas, this group really doesn't.
No.
So that right there, I mean, and Phoenix has a hot goaltender. Dallas absolutely does not right now. And Vancouver, I mean, they don't have any of those things. At this point, they have experience, I guess, but they almost seem to turn that against themselves.
I just think internally the Vancouver's what's happening there. Paul Maurice's honeymoon with Winnipeg has seemed to have petered out.
Yeah, and we said it would. I mean, he came in, he did a remarkable job, but you could tell there was a boost simply by the fact that he wasn't Claude Noel. I mean, it was just a difference. It's not even necessarily a knock on Claude Noel, but it was just something different.
Right.
And they've got some young talent on that team, but they were overachieving, and that's...
Well, and every player is going to play well for their new coach because they want the new coach to say, here's some extra ice time, go get them.
Yeah, and they've also had injuries, too. We should also mention Chicago, Colorado. A week ago, we were talking about how Colorado might take home ice from Chicago. It looks like that's going to be a first-round series, and they still might, but since then, Chicago's won a couple in a row. Colorado's dropped 3 in a row. And if that series is best of 7 and Chicago has home ice advantage, I don't give Colorado that much of a chance.
Well,
I mean, we're still a ways out. Injuries could happen. Anything could happen.
Well,
Patrick Kane's hurt.
Depending on who you are, you've got anywhere between 10 and 12 games left in the season. So the standings are going to shift, but they're not going to shift that much. We've already seen 2 teams clinch a playoff spot. I mean, we're at that point in the season now where teams are going to start looking at, okay, I've got X amount of games. What do I got to do to clinch this playoff spot? Boston's got one in the East. St. Louis has got one in the West. And I think by the time we sit down next week, that landscape's going to change again.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking at it before we started the show. San Jose's 1 point behind St. Louis, so you can go ahead and pencil them in here. By the time we do this podcast next week, you figure San Jose, Pittsburgh, Anaheim, Chicago, they all are in play.
Yeah, I think so. Tampa.
Boston, St. Louis. It's weird to look at the top 2 teams in each conference. I've been saying this since before they were the top 2 teams in each. I don't know how that isn't the Stanley Cup. I really don't. And then you know very well I'm not a Bruins fan or a Blues fan, but Boston's won 12 games in a row. And
that's what the first time they've done that since 1970-71. I think they won 13 in a row that season.
Yeah, when they had Bobby Orr on the team.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty good team, and they were winning cups around that time. And look, they went to the Cup last year. They've won 12 in a row this year. They're loaded as far as depth. I mean,
they have 4 lines.
I don't want to say that they're immune to injury, because Tuukka Rask, obviously, or Zdeno Chara would be extremely damaging. But anybody up front they lose, they can just plug somebody else in.
Well, that's the thing with those 2 teams is that they're deep 1 through 4.
Also worth noting, Jerome McGinley now has 28 goals for $1.8 million this year.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
And the Bruins, you and I stumbled on this stat the other day, 14 back-to-backs this season. Okay, so this just proves how this team is a machine right now. They are 11-2-1 in the first half of those back-to-backs. So just the first game. Like Boston's playing at home tonight, and they're playing in Montreal tomorrow night. They're 11-2-1 in the first half. They're 12-2 in the second half.
That's unreal.
That's when you're supposed to lose.
Yeah, it's in the second game.
I mean, coaches around the league kind of concede that, yeah, we're going to have some losses, and they're probably going to be in the second half of back-to-backs. I mean, that's
right.
Just the other team isn't tired, you are. They get stronger as the game goes on.
That happened last night against the Coyotes.
It happens every night with the Bruins. It just does.
I mean, the Coyotes are expecting, team coming in back-to-back, be a little bit tired. Nope.
The Coyotes, who had won 7 of 9 and played a pretty good hockey game.
They played a very good hockey game.
Nobody can beat Boston right now.
Yeah, and they're not taking their foot. I talked to you before we started recording, and it's like I was talking to my son last night driving home, and I said, that's the difference between a good team and an average team, is the average team will take the foot off the gas pedal. The good teams, the pedal is to the floor, and Boston is not taking their foot off the gas in any way, shape, or form. And you made the point, St. Louis is doing the same thing in the West.
Yeah, I think it's the difference actually between a good team and a great team. Because there are some good teams in this league that are in pretty good spots and they have things kind of locked up. But I look at the Bruins, and the Penguins out east. They really haven't anything to play for about a month.
Right.
I mean, they knew they were going to win their divisions. I guess you could make the case that the two of them could be fighting for the top spot, but whatever. It all comes down to matchups in the first round of the playoffs anyway. You know you're going to have home ice. And Pittsburgh hasn't really let up either, but Boston just looks like they are taking it personally if they lose any games.
Right.
And they've got the goaltending that a lot of teams don't have. That's scary.
And they have a defensive core.
And they've been there before.
Yep. You're listening to The Hockey Podcast. Feel free to email comments or questions to the show at our email address, thehockeypodcast@gmail.com.
Segment 2. Doug, good news. I feel like I have my voice back. Didn't have it in that first segment. That wasn't even my voice.
What was I listening to?
I don't know. It was a struggle. But
when did you lose it?
It was in and out. But here we go. Segment 2. I'm ready for this one. The Edmonton Oilers.
Hypochondriac or hypercritical?
Hypercritical is not the same thing at all.
Is that of yourself?
No, absolutely not. I'm hyper impressed with myself.
I heard your voice, so I don't know how you lost your voice, and now you have it back.
That was all pre-recorded.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
You were just talking, and I was hitting a sounder.
Oh.
The Edmonton Oilers lose again.
Well, that's why they're last in the Western Conference.
Yeah, it's we've touched on this before, but I don't understand how this team. I don't get what they're doing anymore. I mean, what do you do if you're the Oilers? This is what we're gonna do. We got 5 minutes here. We're gonna solve all the Oilers' problems. Ready?
Oh, that's tough.
No, and I'm gonna pin it mostly on you. You do it. I'll just throw the problems at you, and you solve them. Okay?
Well, first of all, get a goalie.
Well, they did. They got Victor Fost
and Scrivens.
Yeah, I mean, those guys were decent elsewhere. They're not good in Edmonton, though.
Okay, so first of all, you have to get your decent goaltender. You say they have decent goaltending.
Look, they went out and at least tried to get decent goalies, and Scrivens had that shutout earlier this month or late last month where he made like 150 saves to get a shutout. Like, it was just absolutely ridiculous what he had to do, but that speaks to the lack of defense in front of him.
Well, that's where I was going next.
Well, let me set the stage a little bit in case you live under a rock. They played Calgary last night in Edmonton, and they jumped out to a 1-0 lead. And then they lost 8-1 to a Calgary team that is not great either, but at least they're showing some signs of life. I mean, Calgary has made things difficult on some top teams lately. They beat Anaheim 7-2. They pushed Dallas and actually beat Dallas in the shootout 4-3 last week as well. But the Flames shouldn't be scoring 8 unanswered goals on you. Nobody should ever score 8 unanswered goals. And so the Oilers, for the second time this season, have one of their fans throw a jersey on the ice. Remember the first time earlier in the year, Dallas Eakins called that individual a quitter. And then...
How's that a quitter?
Well, I figured if I just kept talking about it, it would eventually get you angry.
I don't understand how that's a quitter.
He threw his jersey on the ice.
Well, I mean, I just paid $125 to watch you play, and you didn't play. That is pretty much the only voice that fan has, because that fan's not going to have a one-on-one with Coach Eakins and say, can we have a talk? Can we talk?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Can we discuss strategy?
Can I ask you what's going on? Why are we losing? Why are you starting this person over that person? That fan's not going to have that kind of voice. So they have comment boards, which usually don't go well because people hide behind them. But there you are, public display. I'm taking off my Oilers jersey and I'm throwing it. It's no different than fans that put brown paper bags over their heads in the stands.
That might be next.
I mean, that's kind of what that is. So to get upset over it, it's like, why not just admit it? Hey, I understand where this guy's coming from. He spent a lot of money to come see us play. We're not performing. It's on us. Don't call a fan the quitter.
Well, you made the point off the air. Maybe we should just start recording the podcast 10 minutes earlier because that's when all our best points were made. But by doing that, you've now basically put that target on the ice, so to speak, of, hey, look, fans, if you're upset and you want to show your displeasure, throw your jersey on the ice because it'll make us upset, which is apparently what the fans, I mean, it's been a very frustrating, not year, 8 years for Oilers fans.
Right.
They've been in the playoffs since they went to the Stanley Cup in 2006. And it's fine, you're going to miss the playoffs sometimes, but they've been told to be patient, and they were. I mean, the Oilers fans, I will give them
How many first-round picks have they had?
Not first round, first overall.
Right.
Oilers fans are pretty good fans. I mean, every encounter I've had with them, I've been impressed. I know I guess they kind of got spoiled in the 80s with what they had.
Right.
But they were told to be patient 3 or 4 years ago. They've been patient, and the team's getting worse.
Which is why they're throwing the jersey on the ice.
Yeah.
I mean,
which they did again last night.
And they did it again last night, and Scrivens got upset.
And he hasn't even been in Edmonton that long.
He picks up the jersey and flings it back into the stands on the end of his goalie stick. And I'm like, well, why are you upset? Because here's the alternative. Fans don't come and watch you play.
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever going to happen in Edmonton, but I hear what you're saying. That is the alternative.
It's not going to happen. So do I get upset because a fan threw his jersey because that fan's upset? Or should I be thankful that they're even coming to the games?
And buying my jersey.
And I'll tell you, the guy that threw his jersey on the Scrivens did him a favor. Now he doesn't have to go buy another one because he would have gone and bought another one.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
but the
Oilers fans are crazy.
Bottom line, the alternative is fans don't come and watch you play. So instead of having 19,000 fans in the building every night, you might have 2,000 or 3,000. Try playing in front of that.
I have the Scrivens quote for you. He said, "You're a fan, you get to say and do whatever you want, call me whatever name you want, but when it comes to that logo, that's a sacred thing for us, and it's disheartening for me to see our fans treat it that way." And then he went on, that's all the quote. He paraphrased later on saying, like, look, guys like Gretzky and Messier have won this jersey before, so to me it's disrespectful to throw it on the ice. That's paraphrasing.
That's if you're a player.
Yes.
The players have to respect the logo. The players have to respect the jersey. My sons My sons play for an association where we don't put names on the jerseys.
It's probably a good way to do it for at least up to a certain age. I hate it in professional sports. Like I hate that the Yankees don't put the names on the back of the jersey just from a broadcasting perspective.
Right, but we do it for that very reason. We're trying to teach the boys that you need to respect who you're playing for and the guys that played before you, the guys that made the association ban them through 18, and now the associations might through 18 because there was guys before you that stuck with the association and built the association and got it to where it's at. You have to respect that logo. I get where Scrivens comes from, but that's if you're a player, not a fan.
I think his heart's in the right place, and it didn't seem like I saw the interview with him afterwards. He didn't seem angry. He genuinely seemed offended.
He seemed angry when he threw it back in the stands.
Yeah, that was a pretty good tomahawk toss back in there. He just took it with the stick and just chucked it back there. Look, this just speaks to the bigger issue with the Oilers, and we haven't even gotten to the water bottle incident, which is, I'm sure, going to be blown out of proportion, but Taylor Hall comes back to the bench, spikes his water bottle. Water goes on Dallas Eakins. He wipes off his face and then chucks the towel towards Taylor Hall. Not a great situation in Edmonton right now.
But, again, before we started the podcast, I told you I've been in that situation in youth hockey. Player gets upset of something on the ice, comes back, throws his stick down, it bounces up and almost hits me. I turn and I immediately react to the player going, what is your problem? Control your emotions. You almost hit me with a hockey stick. Eakins got a little wet. He probably did the same thing. Threw a towel at Hall and said, look, dude, settle down. Control your emotions.
And they both said after the game, It's not a big deal. That stuff happens. You just happen to catch it on camera.
Yeah, it's emotional.
And I agree 100% with him. I don't think that there's an issue between
No,
Taylor Hall and Dallas Eakins.
absolutely not.
However, there's definitely an issue in Edmonton. I don't know what they do. I mean, I really genuinely, I guess you take what right now would be your number 2 overall pick and you draft another good player, or do you trade that number 2 pick? I mean, that might be in play this time.
If you own the Edmonton Oilers, what would you do?
I thought things would go better than this with Dallas Eakins. But I think you have to give him a second year. I think part of their problem has been that they just change every year. I didn't think Ralph Kruger really ever even got he got a half a season last year. That was the look they gave him, a half a season.
I'll go you bet one better.
Okay. You bring back Wayne Gretzky and have him play?
If I'm the Edmonton Oilers and I own that club, as an owner, I'm going to start doing my due diligence, and I'm going to start at the top. I think when you have a front office that's changing things as much as they're changing, which is what you just said, you get what we're witnessing right now.
The only thing that has stayed constant over the last couple of years with Edmonton is the young players they have there.
Right.
That's almost worse because you have young players that should be learning how to win, they're learning how to lose. But then B, one coach comes in, this is how we're going to play hockey. Okay, well, we'll buy into that. We didn't make the playoffs this year, but, there's some progress. No, we're starting over. Okay, well, we'll buy in. Okay, now we're starting over again. That doesn't work. I don't care who your players are. Yeah, you could probably get away with it if you had Jonathan Taves or Sidney Crosby when they were first breaking in, but it's not working with this group.
The basic foundation of hockey is pretty much the same whether you're a mite or a professional player, all right? So playing the game's not the issue. These boys all know how to play. The issue is exactly what we're talking about, is all the changes. So you ask me to buy in. I buy in. And then another coach says, oh, well, I want you to buy into this. And so, my head's going, woof. I know how to skate up and down. I know how to pass. I know how to shoot. But now I got to buy into all these systems. I mean, that's what's the great thing, I think, in Phoenix is that the players buy into the coaching staff and the front office staff's philosophy of how they want to approach games and how they want to approach a game every single night.
Yeah, that is almost, we're seeing it. That's more valuable than raw talent because everybody at this level has talent.
Correct.
So it's not like you're talking, oh, Taylor Hall is a great player, and then we have this guy off the street. They're all NHL players.
They're all good hockey players.
So then you have to get to get that extra little bit out of them. You need them all on the same page. They need to buy in. They need to understand that they're going to go into the corners or block shots, and they're going to deal with a lot of pain, but it's going to be worth something. If you're an Edmonton Oiler, you go out there and block a shot against San Jose this week, and you break your ankle. And what did it get you? It got you maybe one more
to the golf
win.
course sooner.
Yeah, it's not like that's going to push you into the playoffs where you might make a run and at least pursue the Stanley Cup. It's just, and plus when you're told to buy into something different every year, at some point you just stop buying in.
I think you're right. I think Dallas Eakins stays. You've got to have that consistency on the bench, or else your guys are just going to repeat what they're repeating. And I think the front office needs a tweak.
I mean, they've been doing that too. It's going to be interesting to see. I now want to know what they're going to do with that potentially second overall pick. I mean, there's a lottery, so it could be the first again. They've tried that. I almost wonder if you find a team that's got some vets that would trade a couple key pieces for the first overall pick or second overall pick. Maybe you do that this time because just taking one more young player, I don't think is going to turn things around for you.
Yeah, and I mean, this team is so loaded up front with talent. It's just unbelievable.
You're tuned into the Hockey Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Hockey Podcast for even more hockey news.
# do it.
Final segment, news and notes. Doug, the 2014 NCAA Tournament field is set.
It's already been going for...
No, not basketball.
Oh!
Hockey.
Frozen Four. Love it.
16 teams. The brackets were picked this morning.
Actually, they're actually this morning.
This is breaking news, really. It's just about 2 hours old.
It starts next weekend.
Yeah, Friday, I believe, first games. So, how do you want to handle this? Northeast Regional, start there.
Go.
You got number 1 Boston, number 4 Denver. You've got number 2 UMass Lowell and number 3 Minnesota State. The main thing, even for the most casual hockey fan that doesn't watch college hockey, is Johnny Gaudreau on Boston College, who you will remember from the gold medal winning U.S. junior team 2 seasons ago. and he's probably going to win the Hobie Baker this year. So that's what you have out of that region.
Keep going.
I'm moving on to a new region.
Yes, you are.
Okay, East region. Union College against Vermont, that's your 1-4. Providence against Quinnipiac, which is the most...
Ooh, say that 5 times
Well,
fast.
I will. Quinnipiac. I mean, it's just the most fun name to say over and over again. Look, they made that push all the way to the championship last year, and kind of nice to see them back in there. I mean, establishing, not like it wasn't a good hockey program before that, but now you prove that last year was more of a building block than, I don't want to say a fluke, but like a one-year flash in the pan, one-year wonder sort of thing. So you got that. Midwest region, number 1 Wisconsin, number 4 North Dakota, 2 teams that seem like they're always there. Ferris State against Colgate. And in the West, talk about a team that's always there, number 1 Minnesota against Robert Morris. Robert Morris started the year off winning 2 of their first 16 games, and they're in the field of 16. And then Notre Dame against St. Cloud State. So there's your 16
There's a lot
teams.
of usual suspects.
Yeah.
Again, but there's some here that aren't usual suspects.
Thanks for that. So you have the usual suspects and then the non-usual suspects is what you're saying.
That was deep.
That was
so really, really deep.
So deep. I don't think I got it yet.
Thing. So that's the bracket. But here's the thing that I like.
I like the fact that it's in a bracket form. I'll take anything in bracket form this time of year.
Here's the thing that I like.
Okay. You like that it's not basketball.
Well, definitely the fact that it's not basketball. ESPN has got full coverage.
Good.
Of hockey. Yes, I know it's NCAA hockey, but ESPN is covering hockey from the very first right down to the national championship game, which will be on ESPN, not ESPN2, not ESPN Double 2, not ESPN Z. It is on the mothership. The national championship is on the mothership.
There's no way that you can spin it where that's not good for the sport.
That's huge.
I love the coverage that NBC and NBC Sports do. I think they've done just a remarkable job exceeding expectations. But it's nice to have some games on ESPN, even if it's just college.
I didn't say it to disparage the other networks.
No.
I said it because ESPN, it doesn't matter what you tell me, is still considered the sports network.
Look, if
there's
it was
other
flipped,
networks, there's other networks that are doing a good job. NBC's doing a really good job now. CBS has got its own network now. They're doing a good job. Fox launched Fox Sports 1, so they're doing it too. But ESPN is the name when you think of sports and sports television, and I think it's huge for the game that you and I love, that the mothership is carrying the national championship.
I just think you're right over there.
Yeah,
you look pretty fired up. It's I just think it's good that it's on a different station, no matter what the stations were. If it was flipped and ESPN had the NHL rights, then I would want this on NBC Sports because it's just you're exposing it to more and more people.
Right.
And look, at the end of the day, I just want to be able to watch it, and I can. And you'll see some
the
players that'll be in the NHL here.
At the end of the day, I remember back in the day when ESPN did have the television. I love it when they put it on over-the-air channels. It's like, this would be cool if it was on ABC.
Oh, yeah. Like on the main, basic
station, so that everybody, people that don't have cable, can see the game.
And maybe we'll get back there. If you don't have cable now, you can't watch anything, right?
It's hard, especially sports. Most of the sports is on cable channels.
Bobby Shay, Ty Rattie. Want to talk a little AHL hockey, Doug?
Well, they call it the minors for a reason, don't they?
Boy.
Movies like Slapshot kind of set the stage for that. I mean, even though Slapshot was a comedy and took everything to the 10th degree, Bobby Shay
did it because I think that you're just your average fan out there that doesn't follow hockey. So just I'm a football fan and I like basketball. I'm going to watch Slapshot. Oh, that what a crazy movie. That stuff would never happen. That's minor league hockey. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, but it's amplified.
A little bit.
Okay? But, Bobby Shay gets into a fight with Ty Rattie. And it all started with Shay coming in, hitting Rattie up against the boards, and took the liberty of using his elbow to the head. And after he makes the hit...
People don't like that.
Most guys don't like it. And after he does it, he skates away, and Rattie follows him and clearly said something.
Probably not nice.
It probably wasn't nice.
It didn't seem supportive
So
in the way
Bobby
he
Shay
said it.
decided he was going to spin around as fast as Linda Blair's head in The Exorcist.
Wow.
And throws his gloves down.
Random reference.
And a fight breaks out.
Well, I've never seen a hockey fight before.
Well, that doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
Rattie and Shay leave the ice. They're walking parallel to each other down a large corridor that's about 50 feet wide along the rubber mats, and they have to walk on rubber mats because of their blades, right?
Yeah, you don't want to mess up your skates.
You can't see from the footage, but clearly something is said again.
Yeah, probably, again, not supportive.
And Bobby Shay decides he's going to crawl like a toddler from one side of the hall to the other and confront Ty Rattie in the corridor.
Although, to be fair to Bobby Shay, and this is probably the last point in this where I will be fair to him, crawl like a toddler is a good description, but he did it really quick. It was more like a spider monkey. But he was just across. And then they just kind of like, you could tell there's a moment where they're just looking at each other like, well, here we are, face to face.
Bobby Shay throws a punch. Some off-duty police officers break it up.
8 games.
And Bobby Shay's out for 8 games.
And that's really probably the end of that story, but I felt like it was a story that had to be told.
It was funny. It's
the
just,
videos, yeah.
And then the best part is to listen to the broadcasters.
Yeah.
You would have thought the crime of the century was committed, and it was actually very humorous. I want to touch on something real quick. The New York Rangers are actually starting to come together.
They've been coming together for a while.
And, guys like Rick Nash are scoring.
Is this an apology to Rick Nash?
No.
Okay.
Because he should have been doing this at the start of the season.
Geez. Never enough with you Toronto fans.
But Lundqvist gets his 50th career shutout last night.
Franchise record.
But here's the best part. Not only does he get his 50th career shutout, it's against Martin Brodeur.
Yep. Against the Devils, which I think probably means more to Rangers fans. If you're a Rangers fan, you can email the show and let me know. But I think beating New Jersey.
But just the status of those two goaltenders going head to head, and then to get your 50th career shutout, I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and the Rangers, that's 3 wins in a row for them now. So that 4 of their last 5.
Yeah.
They're not safe in the East either. Really, nobody's safe except Pittsburgh, Boston, and Tampa, and Montreal.
But we've been saying it since the start of the season. This team is just too talented to kind of flounder the way they did at the start of the season. It's nice to see that a team that's talented finally get their act together. Philadelphia was another one. Philadelphia's finally got their groove going. So
yeah, both teams that changed their coaches at the start of the year.
Right.
And we did, we said that. We offered that as a sort of caveat when we were talking about the Rangers at the start of the year. It was a new coach. You knew they were going to be here. You knew Philadelphia was going to be here. Those 2 teams should probably play in the first round, and right now they would. And that'd be a pretty good series. 2 teams that hate each other, which is really what it's all about when you get New York and Philadelphia together.
Okay, so now we get to make fun of a Montreal fan.
Well, this should be just a regular recurring segment on the show.
Well, as a Toronto fan, there's nothing better than to make fun of a Montreal fan.
This is the greatest video footage you're going to see all year. We saw some
we can't show them on the podcast.
No,
so
we
we'll
can't.
have to describe it.
But there's been some great goals specifically this week that are going to be top 10 of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be great video footage. But
okay, so when you go to a hockey game and you spend a lot of money to sit on the glass, one of the first things that you should always learn is that if you like to have a adult beverage,
don't put it on the glass.
Don't put it on the ledge by the glass. Why?
Because there's a hockey game going on.
Because there's a hockey game going on, and players like to hit other players up against the glass and the boards, and typically that adult beverage will end up on your lap, and you'll be uncomfortable for the rest of the game because your pants are wet.
And people will make fun of you, as they should.
Yeah, people will make fun of you. Well, a Montreal fan took it one step further. Go ahead, Luke. I'll let you have this one.
He's not the first guy that's ever done this.
Was it a he or a she?
I don't even know. They're only in the frame for like a tenth of a second. Look, if you've been to a hockey game, you know that there's that person that just stands up and just bashes on the glass and just bangs.
Which I've never understood.
I don't either. It really, you want to talk about acting like a toddler. That's what it's like. It's like, I'm going to make noise and everybody's going to look at me. And in this particular, what is it? It's Montreal, Columbus. The footage is just great. The person stands up, bangs on the glass, and then there's a check into the glass, and then the person's gone.
The person, like they're leaning against the glass, the check boom, hits, and that person flies back into their seat from the impact on the glass.
And hockey fans are so kind. Like, in general, hockey fans they're great people. But I guarantee you that person was mocked mercilessly for the rest of that game. Again, as it should be.
Well,
now they're being mocked on the internet and on this show. So international mockage.
It was funny.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was probably the highlight of that game.
I'm sure that person didn't think it was so funny, but now you know why.
Don't stand up and bang on the glass. You make yourself the center of attention by doing that, right? I mean, you're not banging on the glass like, hold on, there's some ice on here. I want to clear it off so everybody can see. I'm banging on the glass because I want everybody to look at me.
Right. Exactly.
And we are. And we're laughing. As we touched on this is the final thing I have, unless you have something else. Talked about Evgeny Kuznetsov coming up a couple weeks ago for Washington, kind of a secret weapon that they had at the end of the season. Nashville, you said, is calling up Philip Forsberg.
Yes.
Who isn't really going to, he can't get them into the playoffs this year, but they want to see what they have in him. See if they ripped off Washington last year when they traded for him. And Chicago is calling up Teuvo Teravainen because they have to.
They have to. I mean, when you lose Patrick Kane, man, it's not a good situation to have.
No, and it sounds like they'll get Kane back for the playoffs. But
3 weeks, I mean, the scary thing about Patrick Kane, though, it's a knee injury. It's not like a contusion or whatever. I mean, it's a knee.
I think he's coming back. If he doesn't, they're not winning the Stanley Cup. Not this year. Not when there's so many other teams. They might not win it anyway. But if you're Chicago, your goal is Stanley Cup or nothing every year now.
Correct.
But Teravainen, just quick background on him, number 18 overall pick in 2012. And, I mean, they have really high expectations for this guy. I remember the quotes back when that draft took place from Chicago's front office, we didn't even have him on our board because we thought he'd be gone in the top 7 or 8 picks. And now here he is at 18. It's funny how those guys always seem to fall to the good teams. Like, if you look at the 2012 draft, Tomas Hertl went right before him. He was great this year before he got his knee taken out. Olli Maatta went 22 to the Penguins. He might be their best defenseman right now with everybody that's hurt. And then you look at the very top of the draft. You know who was number 1 that year?
2012?
Yeah. There's a lot of good players lower in this draft as I'm looking at it. Philip Forsberg was 11th that year.
Who was 1?
Neil Yakupov.
That's right.
Proving once again that it doesn't always pay to have the very first pick in the draft.
Well, here's another stat for you. 50% of the guys that are selected in the first round of the NHL draft, 50%,
okay,
don't make the show.
60% of the time it works every time. There's a stat for you. Care to guess Neil Yakupov's plus minus before we sign off? Just for this year.
This year? This season?
Yeah.
Minus 20.
No, minus 33.
Or in the film.
That's it for episode 34. Join us next week as we inch closer to the start of the postseason and eliminate a few more teams from the playoff picture.
Also next week, Luke and I will take a closer look at the Frozen Four as it gets underway.
And Doug will panic about the Maple Leafs some more. Plus, whatever else happens in the next 7 days. Thanks for listening to the Hockey Podcast.